Martin Group is a company that was started in 1957. We do staffing and recruiting, primarily in engineering, telecom, IT. And the company was actually started by Ian Martin, who was an engineer, and my grandmother, who was, they started as 50-50 business owners, so it's quite progressive for her at that particular point in time. And she sort of, did the business stuff. Also, I kind of have a personal passion for literacy. I spent about 5 years working with a community. It's actually a sort of a Salvation Army church, working with people who are sort of street involved and teaching literacy in that context. So I know I wanted to be here for more of the conference. I missed some of it yesterday, but I know you guys are talking about outcomes and targets and all that, and the folks I was working with, like, we didn't have any of that. So what we're going to talk about is something that you all, I think, know. Well, I know a little bit about B Corps, but this other stuff, policy, public policy and impact investing, aren't really my areas. These are slides that come from B Lab, which is the organization out of the United States that's gotten this whole B Corp movement. So why do we need this? So I know a lot of you are in government and not-for-profit, so I figured I'd jump right in there. Government and not-for-profit are necessary but insufficient to solve the scale of the problems that we have, right? And to address our greatest challenges, we need to harness the power of private enterprise to start creating a public benefit. I don't know if this is accurate, but I think what I've heard is that government and not-for-profit make up about 15% of GDP, the economy, and business is 85%. And so, Ian Martin basically is one of those businesses that said, hey, as one of those companies in the 85%, we believe and we want to take the leadership position in doing more to create a public benefit as an organization. So there's complications, though, to all of this. The first thing is that current corporate law works against sustainability. It's primarily US-based. It's not as strict in Canada. But the classic case is Ben & Jerry's ice cream. You guys know that? They had some other minority shareholders, and Unilever, making a long story short, right? Unilever comes in with a hostile takeover offer or a high price for the company. They try to match it with sort of one that also contains the social benefit mandate that Ben & Jerry fostered over the years. Ultimately, the minority shareholders force it to be sold to Unilever because it's actually illegal to not do a transaction in a business context in the United States that doesn't maximize shareholder value. Right? The other thing is that there's no standards to distinguish good companies from good marketing. So this is the greenwashing problem that we're all sort of familiar with. Okay, so this is kind of me. I started, actually, the last time I was in a classroom like this, I was, I started the first 3 years of university in English, but taking math and computer science electives, which I know sounds crazy. And then I flipped because I did some international travel, and I wanted to actually go and try to work in another country and have a technical degree to do that. So I ended up starting my career as a software developer. And so anyway, does anyone know what 127.0.0.1 is? Nobody. It's an IP address. What's special about it? Does that go to your router? Okay, so any computer you get, when you take it out of the box, it thinks its own IP address is 127.0.0.1. So there's no place like. Oh. Right. So anyway, this is just to prove my nerd credentials. All right. So does anyone know? So now we're going to talk about the economy and capitalism, actually, in the context of software application or architecture. So does anyone know what essentially? There's actually only really one line of code that runs our economy, that runs capitalism, and it's really the essential reason why it's been such an effective system over the long term. Does anyone know what that line of code would be, or what that instruction is, that loop that just runs over and over again? Does it make more money than do it? Okay, so then, yep, that's pretty much it. Anyone else got an angle on this? People often say profit. And I always say profit for who? So profit for who? Shareholders, right? Shareholders. So maximize shareholder value. So every instruction, in theory, as a CEO of a company that I get, I run through that algorithm, right? Does this maximize value for our shareholders? Now, our company's a little different, but most companies, that's what it is, over and over and over and over and over again. The thing is that powerful systems sometimes have unintended consequences. And so this is kind of the way I like to look at this whole project, is from moving from this idea of running this loop over and over again, maximize shareholder value, to taking the same loop, but putting in what, as a software developer, I would call a hack, right? So now we're going to move to the idea of creating stakeholder value, not just shareholder value. Okay. 6 minutes in, I'm doing awesome. A B Corporation is a new kind of company which uses the power of business to solve and look at addressing social and environmental problems. So B Corps do these things: higher standards of social and environmental performance, expand corporate responsibility. So the first thing is we need performance standards, right? So there's something called the B Impact Rating System. This is basically a comprehensive set of metrics. You can go on, anyone can go online and do this for free, thinking about the context of their own business, and they get a score, right? So Ian Martin is like a 89.1 on a scale of 200. So even, and 80, you have to be a minimum of 80 to become a certified B Corp. The average North American business would be like a 30 to 40. And then there's some tremendous social enterprises and that kind of thing. Even there, like a 137, 140, which they struggle with. Like, how can I be getting like 60% and that's good? But there's just, it's such a comprehensive rating system. I actually even have an article that's on our blog that just talks about how much we learned just from the kinds of best practices questions that we got from just going through this without even becoming a certified B Corp. So if you have friends or associates in business, get them to do this B Impact survey. It will start to change the way they think about how they do it. The other thing is legal standards. So this whole issue around Ben & Jerry's, how do we get the kind of standards, particularly in the U.S., and allow these stakeholder corporations as opposed to shareholder corporations to be able to do what they do and to carry out both their profit mission and their social mission and their environmental mission in concert. So this has momentum. It's been growing for about 5 years since the founders started this idea, started the brand and the concept. Currently, there's 640 companies and 4.2 billion in revenue. I was just at their annual conference last week, and there was a huge company that was kind of privately announced, which will be coming out. I don't know how to tell you, but it's exciting and continuing to grow. So some companies, you guys might know, like Method, they make soaps, and you guys get dishwasher products, so they're also certified B Corp. So there's also momentum, and in Canada we don't really, we're not as focused on the legislation piece right now, but in the U.S. There's actually B Corp legislation, so it's basically 8 pages that get hacked or tacked onto the existing business infrastructure and business legislation. It's really simple. It just says basically businesses that certify as a benefit corporation have to work against an independent third-party standard. There has to be an annual report that they put out on their impact. It's pretty neat. The General Counsel of the United States said that this is the most innovative thing to come along in corporate legislation in more than 25 years. So it's rolling fast. It's already passed in 10 states, and I think there's 6 or 7 that are considering the legislation. Okay, so there's also a lot of press about this. It seems to be catching on. In fact, 2 weeks ago, that's one of the founders there, Andrew, of B Corp. He was on stage with Bill Clinton, who was basically giving them an award associated with the work that they did. Okay, so who are these B Corps? So Patagonia is one. You guys all know them, outdoor products, 1,300 employees, and their focus has really been becoming a leader in supply chain transparency. Right? Cascade Engineering, again, they're a big company out of Michigan, focused on regional sustainable economic development. But they're really an engineering company. They work for they're an automotive parts manufacturer, primarily. Other B Corps, so this is actually in their slide deck. I changed it a bit, but so non-traditionally green or social industries like us. We're a staffing company. So what we have is we've said, okay, it's we're in this area of employment, and what's important to us is to look at the whole person. How are we supporting, this looks like Maslow's hierarchy, right? So at the bottom, job, middle career, at the top. What we're really particularly interested in is working with people over time to connect to their calling. And then we take the profits of our organization and funnel that back things like even being here today. How are we going to address structural barriers to employment, right? And we have our brands sort of aligned to help this happen. Over here, you can see our impact metrics. So the B impact score measures your governance, your workers, your community, and the environment. And it's those. You can look more detail online. So I really want to tell you about these guys, because I just met them last week. They're a company called Better World Books. Two guys basically didn't like the price their university bookstore was going to give them for their textbooks, so they went on eBay and sold them for, instead of $20 for $50 or something. And they said, oh, maybe other people would give us their textbooks and we could keep doing this and selling it, and we'd give them some money and we could give the rest of the money away. Right? So I went and actually kind of wanted, as a business, we talked about scale at the start and the impact that business can have and the role it can play. So have a look at this. These are their financials. In 2005, they were a $5 million company. Right now, they're a $56 million company. They have, in that time, and this ticker I just took last night off the top of their website, so it's totally up to date. They've donated 6.6 million books. They've raised $13 million for literacy and libraries. And they've donated, reused or recycled 94 million books. Right? That's incredible. You can see that scale. Now project that forward another 20 years. What impact do these guys have? These guys donate, so you've heard of 1% for the Planet. Mountain Equipment Co-op has that program. They give 1% of their revenue to environmental causes. These guys give 6 to 8% of their revenue. So 6 to 8 times that. That's about 3,000 times the charitable givings of the average North American corporation. So forget about all these reasons. I think there's a story, right? Someone walks across 3 people, kind of in the Middle Ages, breaking stones, right? He asks the first guy, there's 3 guys, asks the first guy, what are you doing? And the guy says, I'm breaking rocks, right? Ask the second guy, what are you doing? I'm feeding my family. Ask the third guy, what are you doing? And he says, we're building a cathedral, right? And I've gotten a bit of a sense, even from you guys, that this whole area, nobody knows what they're doing yet. I know I'm talking to Mike. I don't know. And but I think what we're looking at is saying, 100 years from now, we believe that the way the economy works needs to be different than it is today. And the only way to start that is for us as a company to start breaking rocks. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm done.